Alright, so I've had a few requests to do videos on factoring polynomials, and I've done, factoring quadratics, and I've done one where the leading coefficient was 1, but I wanted to do one where the leading coefficient was not 1. And so here we have a quadratic, 6x squared minus 21x minus 45, and always the first step to factoring a quadratic is to see if there's a greatest common factor. So we want to figure out, is there some number that can divide into 6, negative 21, and negative 45. And as I look at this, I notice that 3 can go into all three of these numbers. So for instance, I can factor out a 3. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and place two parentheses here. And to get what goes inside here, I'm just going to divide everything here by 3. Oops, not sure what happened there. All right. For some reason my thing is glitching here. So 6 divided by 3 is 2x squared. 21 divided by 3, 7x. And negative 45 divided by 3 is actually negative 15. All right, so now what we want to do, and I'm going to go ahead and change colors here, is now we want to factor this. Now notice the leading coefficient is not 1, so the leading coefficient here is 2. So we can't just look at this and say, well, what multiplies to give me negative 15 and adds to get negative 7? Before we could do that with the leading coefficient of 1, but because the leading coefficient is not 1, we can't do that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go ahead and, again, you don't want to forget this 3. Don't want to forget that number on the outside, but I'm going to go ahead and draw my two sets of parentheses. And the way I'll remember this is I remember that f times f equals f. Now what does that mean? What that means is that if I'm looking at my two sets of parentheses, the first term times the first term should give me the first term here. So for instance, I ask myself, what can multiply to give me 2x squared? Well, I know that if I do 2x times x, that would give me 2x squared. And again, what the f times f equals f is telling me that the first times the first, being this is the first term in this parentheses, this is the first term in this parentheses, should give me the first term in my original quadratic. And I also know, and I must change colors here. Let's go with some pink. I also know that the last times the last should give me the last. Now what I mean by that is the last term here times the last term here should give me negative 15. So I'm asking myself, well, what multiplies to give me negative 15? And again, there could be multiple different options. I can do negative 15 and 1. I can do negative 3 and 5. So I'm going to try negative 3 and 5 real quick, see if that works. Now notice, I'm not finished here. This is not the solution because I have to check it. And the way I check this is I look at the outer and the inner. And I'm going to, again, use a different color here. I'm going to use this kind of pinkish color here, this red. But I'm going to look at the outer and the inner. Oops, I can't spell inner. Okay, so I'm going to look at the outer and the inner. Now what I mean by that is this. I'm going to look at, this is the inner here, and this is my outer. And that when I do the inner and the outer, they should add to give me that middle term. So for instance, negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And 2x times 5 gives me 10x. Oh, well, that was fortunate. I didn't mean to do that on purpose. But if you look at these, if I add negative 3x and 10x, what do I get? I get positive 7x. Oh, well, actually that doesn't give us negative 7x. It actually gives us positive 7x. So we may need to switch the signs here. So for instance, let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Actually, maybe even a little more than that. So let's see if that works. Why is it not erasing for me? There we go. All right. Not sure why it wasn't really working for me. But let's go ahead and switch this. So I'm going to make this actually a positive and this a negative. And so now this gives me positive 3x and negative 10x. And if I look at this here, again, this adds to give me that middle term. So what I need to do is, again, make sure the first times the first gives me the first. the last times the last gives me the last. And then I check these numbers by looking at the inner and the outer and making sure that they add to give me the middle term. And again, sometimes when you do your answer, you may have to, it may not give you the middle term, and so you have to kind of switch things around. So like what I did here is I changed this to a positive and this to a negative. Whereas before I had a negative here and a positive here. And so what that did, though, the reason I did that is so that I could get that negative 10 here and the 3 here, which would end up adding to give me negative 7x. And then we're finished. And so for this one, it's one of the things to remember is the first times the first equals the first, the last times the last equals the last. And then we check with the outer and the inner. And this was the inner here, and this was the outer here. So I hope this helps. If you do have any more questions, or you want to or if you want me to make another video, please let me know. Hope you have a great day, and hope this video again helps.